Hello and welcome to today's episode of Dream Business, Dream Life. Today I'm joined by Kristina Castellina. Kristina is a devoted mum of two. She's a self-made property millionaire and best-selling author with her background being a professional performer. She built a multi-million pound property empire from nothing, and she now empowers other inspiring investors with her expert insights and practical strategies. Her mission is to inspire and guide others on their journey to wealth and freedom through property investment. She has the most inspiring growth story, and I'm delighted to welcome her to the podcast today. So, hello, Kristina. Great to have you with us today.
Hello. Gosh, that sounds so impressive. I feel like it feels like you're talking about someone entirely different.
It's funny because a lot of people say that, and I'm exactly the same. When people introduce me, I think that's not me. That's not
Yeah,
me. But that is
same.
absolutely you. Own it, my lovely. Completely own it. So let's dive straight into this. So over to you, Kristina, to share your growth story with us.
Okay, so I think it's quite easy. And usually, my growth story would be exactly what you've just read out. That I used to be a professional singer, and then when I was in my late 20s, and I wanted to change, and I wanted to build security. I invested my life savings on property training, and then from there have built a multi-million pound portfolio that has given me, such a great life. And yeah, I would describe myself as a lifestyle investor, where yeah, I live life on my terms, which I don't think you can put a value on that. But actually, so that is a growth story, but I think my true growth story is really started for me as a child. That's where all of this, I think, my background and my childhood has definitely influenced the way that I live my life now. So, as a baby, I was actually put up for adoption as a newborn baby. And it's crazy actually to say out loud the reason why I was put up for adoption. The reason is because my mom, my birth mom, had an affair with a married Indian man. And as soon as her parents found out that the father was Asian, they just said categorically, we're not having this baby under our roof, and this baby will be adopted. And my birth mum tells me that she didn't really believe it, and she thought that as soon as I was born and they held me, that it would change, and she just was in total denial that it was something that would happen. So when I was born, um, she actually said to the doctors, "Is there anything you can say to my parents to make them think that this baby isn't half Asian?" And so they started doing like tests on my skin, and the doctors said, "No, she's not Asian. She's definitely not Asian." So they knew what was going on. They were kind of trying to back her. When she realised, God, they're going to take this baby away. Like this is going to happen. And anyway, yeah, it didn't work. So they literally left me in hospital, and she was kind of carried out screaming like, oh my god, like this thing has happened. And I was born and she turned 18 the next day. So her birthday's the 28th of July, mine's the 27th. So she was so young. When I think of like a 70, if that happened to me at 17, she was living at home with the parents and all of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where, well, straight away my life was different. It wasn't normal. And now I've got my own kids. It breaks my heart more now, because they're so vulnerable, and like just all of it, like breastfeeding them, all of I didn't have any of that. I wasn't, it's only now that I think, gosh, I just want to like give myself a little hug, really, because I think, what must I have been thinking to be on, just to be, I was literally on my own in hospital. So then social services or whoever it is came. I went to foster care for 6 weeks, and then I went to my mum and dad who adopted me. So I was 6 weeks, which I'm really fortunate that it was that smooth actually. And I went to my mum and dad, and my mum, so interesting, she wrote me a letter when I was a baby that she'd planned to give to me when I was 18. She didn't actually end up giving it to me until I was about 25, 26. But this letter, she said, we love you so much. You're the gift that we never thought we'd get. Really gorgeous letter. And she said, basically, I didn't stop crying. And she said that she knew as a baby that I'd need more love than any baby would need. And I just say, like, oh gosh, I must have known. Like, so she said I cried and cried and cried. So they just had to hold me all the time because I would just cry so much. So this is all in this letter anyway. So kind of then toddler and early childhood was great. I was quite look back and laugh in that I've never been an ordinary child, and I've never been an ordinary person. I think some people think that, but it's definitely true for me. I was an only child, had a overactive imagination, really overactive. I would just write and do poetry, and I loved animals. I would talk to the animals. I had an imaginary friend. I genuinely thought I could fly down the stairs. I used to run and like jump off the top, and I can vividly remember it, like flying down the stairs. Mad stuff, wasn't normal. I was really into anything that was a little bit like gothicy, vampire-y, witchy. Used to basically chase after all the other children, being dead scary and weird. So thick black hair, and I'd put it over my face, and I had fangs. I'd put my fangs over my lips, and I'd just go around like scaring the other children. So just not normal, a bit weird. But happy enough. Happy enough. Had this ginger cat I was obsessed with. I would like carry him around. I'd give him like, he'd sit on my back and put his feet over, and I'd hold his bum. Yeah, just a bit of a weird child. But then when I got to, I think about 11, my mum and dad were like, we went on holiday to Scotland, and my mum was like, this is nice, we should move here. And I was like, all right, okay. So we moved up to the Highlands of Scotland in this little village called Aviemore, which I believe now is probably a lot different than it was when I moved. There was literally like a Tesco. It was a ski village, and everything got knocked down. The cinema, the ice rink. There was nothing really there. Beautiful, but nothing there. And from that point where we moved up till the moment we left, I was bullied horrifically for not fitting in, for all the reasons I've just gave, plus having an English accent, and maybe being a bit eccentric, maybe, but mainly because I just didn't sound or look like them. And also, let's not forget, at this point, I actually was half Asian and didn't know. So they used to call me loads of racist things, and I would go, "What do you mean?" But I had thick black, like a monobrow actually, very hairy young girl, and I, they'd say all these racist things to me, and it was so confusing because my mum and dad are the most English-looking people you've ever met in your life, and obviously I'm not. So it was a horrible, horrible, awful time. But two things happened. So I kind of broke, really. I remember going to the doctors because I had counselling. I didn't have a great relationship with my parents either, which makes everything 10 times worse. I didn't feel, and that's not a reflection of them, that's just maybe a personality. And when you're a teenager, little teenagers don't get on with the parents. I didn't feel like I had a huge support network. So I felt bullied, but I didn't feel like I had anyone to really hold me other than my nan and granddad, and they lived in Stafford. So they were nowhere near. So my mum and dad took me to the doctors because I was just so not myself. And the doctor's advice to my mum and dad literally was, I think you should just take her back to England. That was the advice. I think you should take her back to England because she's just because she's just not going to fit in here. And then in the end, the final kind of crunch came when I just couldn't go to school because the bus to the high school, because Aviemore doesn't have a high school. The nearest high school was about 15 minutes away, called Canusi, and all the local villages go to this one school. And that bus journey is hellish if you do not fit in. So anyone that isn't part of the pack, basically. It's like we had stickers on our heads that just basically said, please bully me during this bus journey. So traumatic. I would dread it. That sicky feeling in your tummy when you dread um like home time, because I'd have to get the bus home. And also as well, it's humiliating because my friends would be embarrassed of what would happen, so they wouldn't want to sit by me because they knew I'd be a target. So they just was horrible, horrible, horrible. Makes you feel like you're the problem. There's something wrong with you. So I just basically had just absolute self-loathing, massive self-loathing, hated myself, and I think I just didn't have any strength, and maybe that's from being a baby and having a lot of like rejection. And it's one of those things that there's no research on it, but I just know I've always massively struggled with rejection and self-love. I've always just repelled love. And it's only now I'm an adult that I can reflect and go, well, that's probably because you didn't have a mummy when you were a baby. You don't. No one tells you that, but I know that. I know that it would have affected me, just the way my life's played out and the way that my natural go-to, the way that I tend to react, um, probably just come to a lot of insecurities that I've had from a baby. So I was just really broken, and I just wouldn't go to school. So in the end, I ended up getting a place in the local, it wasn't local actually, the nearest city called Inverness, which was a 70-mile round trip. So I went to school there. I travelled on my own, and it was through the mountains on this bus. Absolutely, the Cairngorm Mountains, just so scenic and so beautiful. And I started to use music as like therapy. So I got really into like rap music because I was angry. I was angry and broken. I got really into like music, and I would just sit on the bus and just like listen to music. And I started to feel more independent because I was going all the way on my own. I was doing about an hour and a half around every day on my own. That from an early age gave me a lot of independence, and also every summer holiday I could not wait to go home, where I would call home in Cannock in the Midlands. That was home for me. And I would get on the train and I would travel, and it was a good bloody 7 hour, 8 hour train ride. And my mum and dad would let me go, and I'd go and stay with my nan and granddad and friends that I still had there. So I started becoming really independent from a young age, and kind of free thinking, and just like, well, this is crap and I don't want to do this, so I'm going to do this instead, and taking a few risks because I'd hit rock bottom. And I think when you feel like you hit rock bottom so young, you start to learn to take risks on yourself a little bit and bet on yourself, and just be a bit like, but I'm not just going to turn up every day for you guys to bully me. I'd rather just get the bus and go to Inverness, where people are a bit more, well rounded. It was a city, and the difference in the way that they thought was incredible, actually. Just different walks of life, different communities, different cultures, people, from everywhere were in Inverness. There was a barracks, you see, so it was a bit more international. So they were much more, welcome me with open arms, and actually ended up making some great friends, and I got a boyfriend. But I was hardened. I was really, I hung around, had a lot of friends, but I also hung around with some quite scary people, which, again, I look back now and I think, wow, those people would terrify me. And if my boys were hanging around with the kind of people I was hanging around with, or I would not be happy. I would not be happy. But I felt almost like I needed protection. So if I hung around with people that were maybe a little bit scary and a little bit edgy, that people wouldn't pick on me. So it's kind of like a defense mechanism, really. So just as I was like fitting in, my mum and dad were like, let's move back to England. And I was like, all right, let's do that then. Again, after another holiday, we were on a holiday to Blackpool, and I was quite a good ice skater, and we'd gone down to Blackpool Ice Rink, and my mum made friends with one of the ice coaches, and I had a few private lessons. And just off the back of that, my mum said, it's a great ice rink, let's move to Blackpool. So my mum's really like just comes up with an idea, let's do it, you know. So she's quite impulsive like that. I'm like that. So we moved to Blackpool, and I think that's where my healing started to happen, really. When I moved to Blackpool, I moved like I arrived like a hedgehog. I went into the end of year 10, so I only really had a full year left at high school, but I turned up ready for a fight. Just for everyone to know, do not mess with me. Spiky, with an attitude, but also full of creativity and ideas. And I would pour so much time and energy into ice skating. And when I left high school, I was a bright kid. I'd just moved around. I'd gone to so many different bloody high schools that, and the curriculum between England and Scotland is totally different. So I'd originally done English curriculum, then I'd gone to the Scottish curriculum, and then for the last year had to come back and do English again, change it, or history was totally different. That in Scotland I did music and I was like an A star, and they didn't have it at my school in Blackpool, so I had to take cooking. I hated cooking, absolutely hated it. But I had to do that instead, you know. So there's lots of like, so I scraped through. I think I got an A in English and a B and some a B and C in science, and I did all right. I wasn't really bothered. Um, and then I came out and I said to my mum and dad, I want to go to Phil Winston's, which was this incredible musical theatre college in Blackpool. It was a private college. And I was willing to like work all my weekends and put all my money to pay for it. You have to audition to get in. Had no dance experience, but I could ice skate and I could sing. I was naturally a very good singer, but I was quite nervous about it. I was quite embarrassed. It's quite personal to sing, and I didn't want that. Again, I didn't want the judgment of like singing and people go, oh, she's crap. But I got in, and that was definitely the turning point. And when I look, so it was a 3 years training at Phil Winston's, and I trained as a singer and dancer. And when I started, I couldn't really dance, and when I left, I was just as good as everyone else. Not the best, but I could definitely hold my own as a dancer. Worked my ass off. It was in my bones to dance. The music, it was just what I was meant to do, really. But I was so riddled with insecurity, riddled with it. I didn't know anything about personal development. I didn't know anything about law of attraction. I didn't know about self-talk. I just didn't. So I just was constantly putting myself down. I sought validation. I was obsessed with boys because I wanted to be loved. Had all these really, I was so selfish. I was so selfish because I was so self-obsessed because I was so empty that everything was about me. Everything was about me. And I would hurt boyfriends just so they would give me more attention. I'd flick them and I'd do horrible things just so they would cry. So I'd go, they love me. Good. I'd do all this weird stuff that, again, I didn't understand why I was doing it. I just thought that's what it is to be young, even though no one else I knew was such a lunatic and everyone else was quite normal. And I was like up and down like an absolute yo yo, acting like just a lunatic, really. And basically, for 10 years, I went out and I worked professionally as a singer, mainly sing. I did do dancing as well in shows, pantos, Snow White. You know, it was always like the princess and stuff. And then on cruise ships, I was the lead singer, and danced, and it was just incredible. I sang at the MGM Grand in Vegas. I've done loads of stuff, production shows, UK tours, amazing life. However, the one thing that's really unforgiving about show business is because it is so, you are a product and it's so judgmental. It's a really difficult place to be if you don't have real self-love, self-compassion, true self-confidence. If you don't have true self-confidence, it's very draining. And I didn't have true, I faked it. I just didn't really have true self-confidence. So I never felt fulfilled. It didn't matter what job I was doing. I always felt I should be doing better. I'm not as good as them. Why am I not thin enough? It's exhausting to live like that. And then something that was a real turning point for me is I was living in London. I was about 23, 24, quite young, really. And I got approached by a friend about network marketing. And this was before the age of Instagram and digital marketing and all of this stuff that, you know, it's now renamed as. This is like when you walk, you're going around with like a bag of products and knocking on doors, and it's old school, old school. She was earning really good money from it, and at that point I was open to anything, literally, to make extra money. And yeah, she just came in like a fairy godmother, really, to be honest, and totally wooed me. And she was driving around with this gorgeous white Mercedes that she'd got, and she was a great community. And the best thing about it was that all these positive people, and a lot of them West End dancers and performers, this community in London of pure excitement, this bubble of like, this is exciting, like, what is this? And then we'd meet, you know, we'd have training in London like every other week, and it would be book club, and they'd be talking about these books that are like changing your mindset and how you should read every day, and like, you know, just realizing like, oh wow, why have I not known this? Why have I been so horrible to myself? So I got obsessed with personal development, reading all the books, had insane work ethic. So I would work my backside off on my network marketing business. Started using like The Secret and vision boards and all that kind of stuff. And then I was singing as well, still singing of an evening, and buzzing, absolutely buzzing. Like, it was just like this secret had been revealed of like passive income, and it was just such an exciting time to be alive, really. And then from there, I was quite successful in the top 10% of the company, but I found it actually quite exhausting. And then I was like, I actually don't want to speak to anyone ever again. Please leave me alone. I just got to that point of like, I don't want to speak to anyone ever again. Which is unfortunate, really. If you've got a network marketing business and you don't want to speak to anyone, it's not ideal. And at that point, property dropped into my life, and I went to a free Rich Dad Poor Dad seminar. Didn't know what it was going to be about. It was about property investing, and there's this American guy, and he was talking about buying property using other people's money and creative strategies, and how, you know, getting all your money back out of the deals and flipping and all of this stuff, and it blew my mind. And at that point, I'd done enough personal growth to think, actually, it's worth taking this. It was a big investment. It was like 18 grand. So yeah, when I think about it now, crikey, it was a different time back then, though. There was no, you know, it was like that or nothing. Everyone charged that. If you wanted to be a property investor, you know, there were two big companies, both charging the same. You're in or you're out. I wanted to be in. And that was 10 years ago. And it has been an absolute blur of madness ever since. So the biggest turning point, I would say, in my growth journey is, again, when I started, you know, made friends with property investors, and I got in the property community. In this company, unfortunately, the company's not around anymore, but it was a great community, and they were all about doing these mad experiences, like Tony Robbins doing the fire walk. And there was a speaker called Rowe. Dr. Rowe is called. He's got a book called The Turning Point, and he put an event on called Turning Point, and I said, "Come on, we'll go." And at this point, I was quite successful as a property investor, and you know, I was in a happy relationship. You know, met my husband, and I was kind of, from the outside, I looked like I had it all. Like, I had a really successful, you know, property business with the guy of my dreams. You know, looked like I had it all together. And I said, I don't need to go to Turning Point. I'm fine. I'll come because I was a binge drinker. I'll come because I want to give up binge drinking. That'll be the thing I come for. And it was a 3-day, like 9 in the morning till 10 p.m. at night, proper full on. Anyway, the first day I'm there, and the guy says, whatever you think you're here for, you're not here for. We'll start there. And I was like, no, I really am. I'm here for health. I'm fixed. I am 10 out of 10 good. Anyway, by that evening, I had a full on breakdown, uncontrollable sobbing, eyes like golf balls. And it was the first time I'd ever opened up about being adopted. And there was obviously a lead up to this. He was asking thought-provoking questions. There was lots of stuff that had happened, but my heart broke into a million pieces, and I cried and cried and cried. And it went on for 3 days. Cried for 3 days. And you know, at one point he said, "Tell everyone what is it what's moved you?" And I said, "I can't say it." And he said, "You have to say it. You have to say, and that's the way that you will heal and move forward." And I just sort of went, adopted. And he went, is anyone else in the room adopted? And there was about 5 people, and he went, come over, and we all had a big hug. And I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. There was a lot of hugging. I mean, really, it sounds mental actually, but it will always be the most transformative thing I've ever done. I needed to release all the pain that I'd been carrying, and he put me back together. And I'd love to do it again actually, because it was so perfect 10, however 8 years ago, and I'd love to do it again because I probably need a little top up, because you think you're fixed, and then like it's life change, you have 2 kids and I think everyone should do it. So actually, even though yes, I've built a multi-million-pound portfolio, and I've gone against the odds in that I did start with no money, and I have raised millions of pounds of private investment, and done stuff that people would think is not possible, I have done it. But actually, I think the most important thing of my journey, the most important meaning thing to me, is actually the transformation in my heart and the self confidence that I now have. And I'm not perfect, and I still wobble. I've still definitely got, I don't think that I've got a little hole in my heart that I don't think will ever fully be filled, but it is most of the time. It's full most of the time. Um, yeah, I'd say that's my biggest growth story, really.
And I love that. I love the fact that, so many people, when they think about growth, they think about the money that you've made, the properties that you've got in your portfolio, all of that sort of thing. And they would assume that that would be the growth. They would assume that's the bit that you're going to say, this is the big bit of my growth when I went from nothing to this multi-million-pound portfolio, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. Nobody's going to take that away from how amazing that is for you. But actually, you're saying it was something much simpler, I suppose, to do. But the thing that we actually find the hardest, isn't it? And that is to actually allow ourselves sometimes to get to that point where you suddenly hugged those 5 people and just let all of that emotion come out, and let yourself be at the point where you said, do you know what? This is me, and this is okay. And now I've got to that point. Now I can start to do something that is going to enable me to feel happier and enjoy this multi-million-pound business that you have built. Because I think for as long as there's something underlying going on in you personally, it doesn't really matter what you've got going on, does it? From a business perspective, or from a how much money you've got in the bank perspective, there's always something niggling away at you that is making you feel that that's not quite enough. So I absolutely love that you've done that. And the bit you haven't mentioned here that I know is part of your, the next bit up, but you have built this business with 2 young children, and your priority is always going to be about those children, isn't it? You do all of this around your children. I love when I see your Instagram sometimes, and you're looking at is it grunters? Is that the word that you use for your properties? I love that, by the way. And you've got your children with you, getting involved in the business, really. And I love that, because that's sort of you doing all of the things with your children that you didn't necessarily get as a child yourself. You're giving them the love, the support, everything that they need to give them the right foundations to start off with.
Yeah, exactly that. And I always think you can't expect your kids to do what you're not willing to do. People like, I want my kids to be brave. I want my kids to, to work hard. I want my kids to have gratitude. And like, but if you're not demonstrating that to them, so that's why I take them with me, because I'm like, this is what mummy does. Mummy buys houses. We buy houses that are, they very smelly. So sometimes Grayson comes out and goes, oh, that was a really smelly one, mummy. Are we going to buy that one? I'll go, too far gone, babe.
Too smelly, that one.
Yeah, like so they're learning, they're seeing, we're going around all these, and also it's such a great lesson for them to see how other people live.
Yeah.
To have some, that's how, and because he'll go, mummy, why was, why were there lots of children in that one room? Or, sometimes you see some really sad things. And I say, because that's where they live, darling. They that's what they can afford to live in.
Yeah.
And it's that them realizing that there's other people, and people, different circumstances.
Yeah, it's real life lessons, isn't it? And I
Real
think as
life.
parents, we have the opportunity to show them that, don't they? In a way that they still feel safe and loved and surrounded, but we have the opportunity to show them all of that stuff, which is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I know we haven't spoken a great lot today about, your property journey as such, but I know there's lots of ways that people can come and, understand that. Your book for starters is a great place to come and do that. If somebody was, wanting to potentially go into property, what would you say would be your top tip for them to get them on that journey?
My top tip for anyone getting into property is do some research and do training. Not even with me, just any form. And now it's so accessible. You can do it online. Like, there's so many ways to get this information. And it's so cheap now. It's so accessible because when you're talking property, you're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds. And it's one of those things where unless you enter the world of property investment and get some knowledge, you just don't know what you don't know. And property, if you get it wrong, can cost you a lot of money. And it can become a headache. And there's so many, a lot of properties I buy are from what I call amateur landlords, where they don't know anything about property. They've just bought a house in the local town. They don't know anything, they've just bought at asking price. And then, they've made some mistakes and they're selling it at a loss to me. And it's because they haven't invested a tiny bit of time and a little bit of money in learning actually what makes a good investment. How can you maximize your returns? How can you maximize the property? How can you provide really good quality accommodation for people to enjoy? So and the government, without a shadow of a doubt, are wanting professionals, and have been driving out people that are doing this as a hobby, because the standard of rental property in the UK is not good enough. So I think, do it, because it's the best pension pot you'll ever have, and if you invest well, it'll give you a great income in the meantime. But just go into this, um, with your eyes open, with knowledge prepared, because you'll just have such a better business model.
Yeah, which is amazing sense. And would you say to anybody that to start this as soon as you can?
Oh God, yeah, because property prices over time just go, like, even in the 10 years from since I've started, I was buying houses for 40, 50 grand, and they're now worth 120. Just on the cheap, the cheaper ones, and that's in 10 years. So it's inflation. It's just inflation. The more money that's out there, the more money that people earn, wages keep going up, rents go up, property prices go up. The sooner you can get on the ladder, and if you can build a portfolio, let's say 4 properties, what does that look like in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time? So instead of just getting the growth on your home, if you're getting the growth across 5 properties, that's how you become a millionaire without doing very much at all. That's just letting inflation do it.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So finally, if any of our listeners want to come and learn more about property and get to know you a little bit better, Kristina, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
So I'm really active on Instagram, which is at @thegoodlife_property investor. And then on my website, it's just my name, KristinaCastellina.co.uk. And on there, it will say anything I'm up to, any trainings I'm putting on, and also will link off to Empress Hall, Highcliffe and Botanical House, which is 11 of my serviced accommodation properties. So if you're looking for a holiday or you've got 20 friends that you want to come to Empress Hall, because it is incredible.
It absolutely is incredible. Absolutely is incredible. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kristina. It's been amazing chatting with you and listening to your growth story. And of course, thank you to everybody for listening. I will see you next time.